The Sloan family's dining room glowed like a magazine spread golden lights, polished silver, and the smell of roasted chicken drifting through the air. On the surface, it looked perfect, but Rachel Carter knew better. She sat at the end of the long oak table beside her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, who carefully folded her napkin as if trying to disappear into it. Across from them, Rachel's brother, Ethan Sloan, leaned back in his chair, his beer bottle sweating in his hand. He was 38, jobless again, still living with their parents, but tonight he carried himself like a man with power. Their mother, Marilyn Sloan, orchestrated the room with a hostess's pride. Her voice sliced through every lull in conversation. "Ethan's planning something big," she said, smiling too wide. "He just needs a little more support, and things will turn around." Rachel forced a polite nod. She had heard this speech before after every failed business, every late credit card bill that mysteriously found its way to her inbox. Marilyn always called it family help. Rachel called it debt with no end. Frank Sloan, their father, cleared his throat and passed the gravy. "You know, Rachel, your mother's right. A little faith goes a long way." Rachel pressed her lips together. "I've given plenty of faith, Dad." The room cooled by a few degrees. Then Lily, trying to fill the silence, smiled and said brightly, "Mom got promoted last month. She's the boss now." For a split second, pride flickered in Rachel's chest, and then it vanished. The table froze. Marilyn's smile tightened. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Is that so?" he said, voice thick with mock surprise. "Congratulations, little sister. Must be nice to sit up high while the rest of us keep the lights on." Rachel blinked. "I've been paying those light bills for years." Ethan smirked. "Off the back of our family's money, right?" He jabbed his fork toward her, then turned to Lily. "Guess you take after your mom always taking, never giving." He flicked a half-eaten chicken bone onto Lily's plate. The sound was small, a soft clink, but it hit like thunder. Lily froze. Her eyes filled fast, and she bit her lip to keep it from trembling. Marilyn laughed, sharp and false. "Oh, Ethan, stop teasing," she said, but her tone carried approval. Rachel's chest burned. She stood so suddenly her chair scraped against the tile. "Enough," she said quietly. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "Everyone here will get exactly what they deserve." No one spoke. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Rachel reached for her daughter's hand. "Come on, sweetheart." They walked toward the door past the glowing chandelier, the spotless china, the illusion of family. Behind her, Ethan muttered something that sounded like a laugh. Rachel didn't turn around. She stepped into the cold Montana night, the snow biting her skin like truth. And in that silence between heartbeats, she made herself a promise this would be the last time they humiliated her child. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of white silence, the snow falling in soft spirals against the windshield. Rachel Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles pale, the hum of the heater the only sound between her and her daughter. 10-year-old Lily sat curled in the passenger seat, her small hands clutching the sleeves of her pink sweater. She hadn't spoken since they'd left her grandparents' house. Rachel glanced at her through the dim dashboard light. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Did I do something wrong?" Rachel's chest tightened. She wanted to tell her no, that none of this was her fault, that the world could be kind if you just kept trying. But she couldn't lie, not tonight. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby," she said softly. "Some people just forget how to be kind." Outside, the snow thickened. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness. Every mile away from her parents' house felt like peeling off a layer of shame. Her phone buzzed a text from Marilyn. She didn't look, but she saw the preview flash. "You embarrassed us. Don't come back." Another message followed, then another. Rachel's stomach turned. Her mother's words, even now, could still hit like a slap. She hit Do Not Disturb and dropped the phone onto the seat, the road signs blurred by Missoula. 12 miles. Home was supposed to be there, a small rented apartment above a bookstore where she'd built a fragile, simple peace. But tonight, even that felt broken. Lily spoke again, timidly. Grandma laughed at me. Mom. Rachel's eyes burned. I know, she whispered, and that's why we're not going back. For a moment, silence settled heavy but clean. Snowflakes tapped softly against the glass, like tiny knocks from a gentler world. Up ahead, the glow of Aunt Claire's farmhouse appeared through the snow, a porch light steady and warm, the kind that always stayed on no matter the storm. Rachel exhaled for the first time since dinner. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but as she turned up the driveway, the warmth of that single light reminded her she and Lily were not alone anymore. The warmth hit Rachel Carter the moment Aunt Claire opened the door. The smell of cinnamon tea drifted out, wrapping around her like an old memory. Claire Donovan, her father's younger sister, stood there in a worn cardigan, gray curls tucked behind her ears, eyes soft but knowing. You look frozen. Honey, she said, ushering Rachel and Lily inside. Sit down before you catch your death. Lily hesitated at the doorway, shy and exhausted. Claire bent down to her level with a smile. There's hot chocolate waiting, she said, as if she'd known they were coming all along. Lily nodded, her lips curling into the smallest smile since the dinner. Rachel sank into the chair by the wood stove, the heat sinking through her jeans and into her bones. For a while, neither woman spoke. The storm whispered against the windows, and the only sound was the clink of cups on the table. Finally, Claire poured the tea and asked, Rough night. Rachel laughed, brittle and small. You could say that. She told her everything: the dinner, Ethan's cruelty, Marilyn's laughter, and the years of paying bills that weren't hers. With every word, her voice cracked open a little more. I kept thinking if I helped enough, they'd love us, that they'd love her. She glanced at Lily, who sat curled up with a mug, tracing shapes in the steam. Claire listened without interrupting. When Rachel finished, the silence between them felt sacred. Then Claire reached across the table, resting her weathered hand over Rachel's. You've been their bank for years. Sweetheart, you think you're buying love, but they're selling guilt, and you've paid more than enough. Rachel swallowed hard, tears stinging her eyes. But Mom helped me once after my divorce. I owe her. No, Claire said firmly, her voice steady as stone. She helped you so she could remind you every day that you owe her. That's not kindness, that's control. Outside, thunder rolled softly over the valley. Rachel wiped her cheek. I can't keep doing this. For Lily's sake, I can't. Then stop, Claire said simply. You don't need their permission to protect your own peace. Rachel's breath hitched, but something inside her steadied. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling only slightly as she typed, I'm stopping all financial support. Effective immediately. She hit send. The whoosh of the message leaving felt like an exhale she'd been holding for years. Claire smiled, nodding toward the window where the snow had begun to ease. See that, she said. Even the storm knows when it's time to let go. Rachel Carter sat on the edge of Aunt Claire's guest bed, the glow of her phone screen lighting the dark room. Lily was asleep beside her, one small hand curled around a stuffed bear, her breath slow and steady. Outside, the snow kept falling, muting the world in a quiet Rachel hadn't felt in years. She stared at the text she had sent, 10 simple words that felt like a thunderclap. I'm stopping all financial support. Effective immediately. It was done. Yet the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the space right before an echo, the kind that comes back sharper. Her phone buzzed. One message, then another. She didn't open them, but she didn't have to. She knew her mother's rhythm: anger first, guilt second, accusation third. Still, Curiosity clawed at her. She unlocked the screen. Marilyn, you're ungrateful. We raised you better than this. Marilyn, don't forget who helped you when no one else did. Marilyn, you're abandoning your family. Rachel's chest tightened, her thumb hovering over the reply box. Old instincts stirred to explain, to apologize, to make peace even when she wasn't the one who broke it. But Claire's words came back. You don't need their permission to protect your peace. She set the phone face down on the nightstand and looked at her daughter. Lily murmured something in her sleep, turning closer to her. Rachel brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. You're safe now, she whispered, more to herself than to Lily. Down the hall? Claire moved quietly, humming as she put the kettle on again. The faint smell of chamomile drifted through the doorway, grounding Rachel back in the present. Another message buzzed her father this time. Frank, you're being dramatic. Your mother's heart can't handle this. Rachel laughed softly under her breath, bitter and tired. Her heart, she muttered. It's her pride that's breaking. She turned off the phone completely and slipped it into her bag. The glow of the screen vanished, leaving only the dim light of the snow outside. For the first time in years, Rachel felt the weight of silence without fear. It wasn't loneliness. It was freedom fragile, unfamiliar, but hers. Morning crept slowly through Aunt Claire's kitchen, painting the walls with pale winter light. The smell of toast and coffee filled the room, but Rachel Carter's stomach felt hollow. She sat at the table, her phone beside her, the screen lighting up every few seconds with new notifications. She didn't have to look to know who they were from. When she finally opened the messages, her mother's words spilled out in sharp bursts. Marilyn, you've humiliated us. Everyone in town is asking questions. Marilyn, after all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Marilyn, you're selfish. You're cruel. Rachel scrolled, her chest tightening. Every sentence was familiar, recycled guilt wrapped in maternal disappointment. Then came the one that cut deeper. Marilyn, you're teaching Lily to abandon her family too. What kind of mother are you? Her hands shook. Claire, across the table, watched quietly. You don't have to read them, she said. I know, Rachel whispered, locking the phone. But I keep thinking if I understand what they want, maybe I can stop the hurt. Claire's voice softened. You can't reason with people who feed on your guilt, sweetheart. You can only starve the habit. Rachel nodded, though the ache in her chest stayed. She poured more coffee, hoping the warmth would fill the emptiness her parents had left behind. Later that afternoon, she drove Lily home. Missoula was small, too small for family secrets. By the time she reached her street, her phone buzzed again. A neighbor had texted everything okay. Saw your mom's post on Facebook. Her blood ran cold. She opened the app. There it was, a post from Marilyn, public for everyone to see. Some people forget who lifted them when they fell. Sad how money can make you lose your soul. Dozens of likes, comments from distant relatives, co-workers, people she barely knew. So sorry you're dealing with that, Marilyn. Family should stick together. Rachel's throat tightened. The humiliation wasn't private anymore. It had become a show. At the grocery store the next day, whispers followed her down the aisle. That's her, someone murmured, turned her back on her parents. By the time she reached the checkout, she could barely breathe. The cashier avoided eye contact, scanning items too quickly. That evening, she found Lily in her room, coloring quietly. Sweetheart, Rachel asked softly, did anyone say anything to you today? Lily looked up. Mrs. Henson said Grandma's sad because we're gone. She paused. Are we bad for making her sad? Rachel's heart broke a little. She knelt beside her daughter. No, baby, we're not bad. Sometimes people get sad when they can't control others anymore. That's not your fault. Lily nodded slowly, her eyes full of trust that Rachel didn't feel she deserved. As night fell, Rachel sat by the window, watching snow gather on the street below. Her parents' voices, the town's whispers, the guilt, all of it pressed down on her. Then, quietly, she whispered to the empty room, "Let them talk." The words didn't erase the pain, but they gave it shape, something she could finally set down. The snow outside had turned to gray slush by the weekend, the kind that clung to boots and refused to melt. Rachel Carter sat at her desk in the small accounting firm where she worked, trying to focus on the endless rows of numbers on her computer screen. The office was quiet, the kind of Saturday stillness that usually calmed her. But today, her thoughts drifted to her mother's posts, to the whispers in town, to the heavy silence that followed each message she didn't answer. The knock on her office door startled her. Tessa Reed, her coworker and closest friend, stepped in holding a manila folder. Tessa's expression was serious. Her usual brightness dimmed. "Rach, I need to talk to you about something," she said, closing the door behind her. Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Please tell me it's not another client emergency. I wish it were." Tessa placed the folder on the desk and hesitated. "I was reviewing some financial records for the bank audit, and I found something under your name." Rachel frowned. "Under my name." Tessa nodded and opened the folder. A $10,000 personal loan, signed last year. She slid the papers across the desk. "The payments are overdue." Rachel scanned the documents, confusion twisting into disbelief. Her name, her address, even her social security number, but the signature wasn't hers. "This isn't possible," she whispered. Tessa met her eyes gently. "I checked twice. The loan officer said your mother was the point of contact." The room tilted for a moment. Rachel couldn't breathe. No, she wouldn't. But the words felt hollow even as she said them. Memories flickered, her mother calling about a small favor, her father promising they'd pay her back, the missing $200 from her joint account she never questioned. Her throat tightened. "She did this," she said quietly, as if saying it too loudly would make it more real. Tessa's voice was careful. "You need to report it before it damages your credit. I can help you file a fraud claim." Rachel stared at the pages, at the loops of her mother's imitation signature, graceful, practiced, cruel. "She used my name," she whispered. "My name." Her voice cracked, but anger began to seep through the shock. Slow and steady, all these years. I gave her everything she asked for. I paid her bills. I paid Ethan's tuition. And when I stopped, she looked up, eyes blazing. She stole from me. Tessa reached out, resting a hand on hers. "You need to protect yourself now, Rach. It's not just about money anymore." Rachel nodded slowly, the decision forming like ice beneath her ribs. She picked up her phone, her fingers trembling only slightly as she dialed the bank's fraud department. When the operator answered, Rachel's voice was calm, too calm. "I'd like to report a fraudulent loan," she said, "taken out in my name." As she hung up, the sound of the snowmelt dripping outside the window filled the silence. Each drop felt like a countdown to justice, to confrontation, to the moment everything her mother built would finally crack. 2 weeks later, the call from the bank came just after sunset. Rachel Carter sat at her kitchen table, the remains of Lily's homework spread out beside her. The voice on the other end was polite, detached, the tone of someone delivering facts without emotion. "Ms. Carter, the investigation is complete. The evidence confirms that the loan was opened under your name by a relative, your mother, Marilyn Sloan. The account has been frozen, and a legal action is being initiated." Rachel's breath caught, even though she had known. Hearing it aloud felt like a final blow. "Thank you," she managed, her voice steady despite the tremor underneath. She hung up and sat still, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge, the sound of Lily humming softly in the next room. The phone rang again this time, her mother's number. She almost ignored it, when she answered. Marilyn's voice was sharp and frantic. Rachel, you have to fix this. The bank is coming after us. You tell them it was a mistake. Do you hear me? You tell them. Rachel's stomach twisted. You forged my name, she said flatly. That's not a mistake. Frank's voice joined from the background, low and pleading. Rach, please, don't do this. You're our daughter. You can't let this ruin your mother. Her fingers tightened around the phone. You ruined yourselves, she said quietly. And you're still trying to make it my fault. Marilyn's tone changed softer now, desperate. We needed the money. Rachel, the house, the bills. I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to keep this family together. Rachel almost laughed. You kept it together by stealing from me. Don't be dramatic. Marilyn snapped. It's not stealing if it's family. That sentence, that single twisted logic, broke something in Rachel that had been holding on for too long. She stood, pacing the small kitchen, anger pulsing through her veins. You used my name, my credit, my life. You humiliated my daughter. You call that family. Marilyn's silence was deafening. Then, softly, you've always thought you were better than us. Rachel exhaled, a long, steady breath. No, Mom, I just stopped letting you make me smaller. The line went dead. The next day, Rachel drove out to her parents' house not because they asked, but because she needed to see it for herself. The once proud home looked hollow. The porch light was off, the yard unkept. When Marilyn opened the door, her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Rachel stepped inside, the air thick with tension. Bills and letters covered the table, the smell of cold coffee and desperation filling the room. Marilyn's voice broke. You've destroyed us. Rachel! We're selling the car. The house. Is that what you wanted? Rachel looked at her mother. This woman who once lectured about pride, now trembling in her own chaos. No, she said softly. I wanted honesty. I wanted love that didn't come with a price tag. Marilyn shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. You'll regret this. One day, you'll need us. Rachel turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. I did need you, she said, but you were too busy counting what I owed. Outside, snow began to fall again, quiet and relentless. As Rachel walked to her car, she felt the weight of years lift from her shoulders. Behind her, the house that once defined her family stood dim and crumbling, a monument to everything she had finally learned to walk away from. The town of Missoula felt smaller than ever. News traveled fast, faster than truth. By the end of the week, everyone seemed to know about the investigation, though no one dared say her mother's name aloud. They just said that family and let the rest hang in the air. At the grocery store, Rachel Carter felt the weight of 100 quiet stares. Conversations hushed when she walked past. Someone from church offered a polite smile, the kind dipped in pity. Another woman whispered. She turned her own mother in. Rachel kept walking, the cartwheels squeaking against the linoleum. She could take the whispers. What hurt was Lily hearing them too? One afternoon, her daughter came home from school, her backpack slung low and her eyes uncertain. Mom, she said softly, is Grandma going to jail? Rachel's heart clenched. She crouched beside her. I don't know, sweetheart, but that's not for us to fix. Lily hesitated. People say you hate her. Rachel took her daughter's hands. I don't hate her, she said quietly. I just stopped letting her hurt us. That night, the house was silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. Rachel sat by the window, looking out at the darkened street. Across town, her parents' home was listed for sale. The pictures were already online, the gleaming porch, the perfect curtains, the illusion of a family that once fooled everyone. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Marilyn Shorter this time. Desperate. You're destroying your own blood. Rachel stared at the words, then deleted them without reading further. Outside, the first snow of spring drifted down, melting as it touched the ground. Rachel watched it fade and thought of all the things that had once buried her. The guilt, the shame, the need to be loved by people who only took. The world beyond the window felt quiet, but for the first time, the silence didn't ache. It felt like space enough for her and Lily to breathe, to start again. Spring came late to Missoula that year, but when it did, it arrived like forgiveness. The snow melted from the rooftops, the river thawed, and for the first time in months, Rachel Carter felt sunlight touch her skin without the sting of shame. She walked to work each morning past rows of blooming lilacs, her heart lighter, her steps steady. The email came on a Tuesday short, official, almost sterile in tone. Congratulations, Rachel Carter. You have been promoted to regional director. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, trying to absorb the words. The promotion wasn't just about money or title. It was proof that the life she had built on her own terms was real. She picked up the phone and called Aunt Claire. "You were right," Rachel said, her voice trembling with a smile. "I'm stronger than I knew." Claire chuckled softly. "You've always been strong, honey. You just forgot for a while. That weekend." Rachel moved into a new apartment downtown, a corner unit with wide windows and sunlight that spilled across the hardwood floors. Lily ran from room to room, barefoot and laughing. "Mom, we can see the mountains from here," she shouted, her voice echoing through the empty space. Rachel smiled, watching her daughter spin in the light. "Yes, sweetheart, we can." They unpacked slowly, box by box, building a new home out of old things. The photo frames Rachel kept were few: one of her and Lily on a summer picnic, one of Aunt Claire holding Lily as a baby, and one of her late father before the bitterness had set in. The rest she threw away. That evening, Tessa stopped by with takeout and a bottle of cider. They ate on the floor, surrounded by half-open boxes and laughter that came easier now. "You did it," Tessa said, raising her glass. "You walked through the fire and came out shining." Rachel smiled, clinking her glass gently. "No," she said. "I came out free. Outside." The city lights shimmered against the mountains. For the first time, Rachel didn't feel like running from her past. She was already home. Night settled softly over Missoula, the kind of quiet evening that carried no weight, no ghosts. Rachel Carter sat on the balcony of her new apartment, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, the city lights flickering below like scattered stars. Inside, Lily was asleep, her dance shoes resting neatly by the door, tiny symbols of a life no longer haunted by shame. Rachel opened her journal, the one Aunt Claire had given her on her birthday, and began to write. The words came slowly at first, then like breath. "Mom, I forgive you, not because you asked, but because I need to let go. I forgive you for the things you said, for the silence you gave when I needed comfort, for the love that always came with a receipt. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll return. It means I'm free. And I hope one day you find peace the way I finally have." She set the pen down and read the words twice before folding the page carefully. She didn't plan to send it. The act of writing was enough. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of rain and lilac. The same streets that once felt small now felt open, full of choices, of tomorrows she could finally imagine. Rachel walked inside and peeked into Lily's room. Her daughter stirred in her sleep, smiling faintly as she dreamed. Rachel whispered, "We're okay now. Baby, we're really okay." She slipped the letter into a small wooden box labeled "Past" and placed it on the highest shelf. Then she turned off the lights. The apartment bathed in moonlight. The city slept. The pain had quieted, and in the stillness, Rachel finally felt what she'd been chasing all along: peace.